What does that button do?
It turns the thing on.
It makes it so other people can hear what we just said later.
Morning, Justin.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I am well, thank you. Good to see you.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, you're feeling a little more relaxed this morning.
That's right.
Yeah.
I got pajama pants on. Got my feet up on the desk. So.
Yeah. Justin looks like he's ready for Christmas morning. He's
That's
got
right.
his pajama pants on and yep. No crease. And like I say, with the little snacks this morning were a good little stocking stuffer. Thank you.
Yeah. Ho, ho, ho.
Yes, indeed. But tomorrow, Thanksgiving.
That's right.
Happy Thanksgiving to you,
Happy
Justin.
Thanksgiving to you.
Yeah.
What are you most thankful for? Just name one thing.
Grace. Yeah.
How am I supposed to beat that? I'm going to say my family.
Yeah. That's a great one.
That's a good one. Yeah.
I consider my family as part of Grace.
I know.
So.
I know. That's I know. Yeah. Okay, I'll go mercy then.
Okay. His mercy is new every morning.
That's right.
Yes.
It's the flip side to grace.
Welcome to How I See It with me, Mark Pratt, and
Justin Sternberg. This is a podcast that works to counter cultural polarization through thoughtful conversations.
yes,
I like
I've had some interesting discussions as far as
yeah, about 100 of them.
about 100 of them. Oh yeah, well, but it was funny
Recorded ones. Or you mean someone else?
I was talking about Grace at CR on Friday.
That's
night.
right.
So I've had a few, interactions, and then in the service on Sunday, they talked about Grace coming to an end.
Yeah.
And so, like I say, had some really good discussion over
That's
that.
cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Would you like to share some tidbits of those discussions? Or?
Most of the interactions was on that the verse
Yeah.
that I had at the end there, where as far as 1 Peter
2:9.
2:9 and 10, yeah.
Right.
As far as all the U's in it, and
Yeah.
I got a lot of text saying, "Okay, what was that verse? What
Yeah,
was that verse?"
So cool. He had us. So Mark read 1 Peter 2:9 and 10
Yeah.
as he was teaching, and every time there was a U, he said, "I want you guys to say out loud your name."
Yeah,
And it was really cool. It was really powerful. Me and Megan both are like, it's so weird to say your name out loud. Like it feels weird.
yeah,
But once we got over that,
Yeah.
it was really cool to kind of hear that verse in that context.
yeah.
You should try it at home.
Yeah, and I was surprised how somber. I wasn't anticipating that somberness, of
The room.
from in that aspect of grace and the gifts.
Gotcha.
And it really kind of maintained, even though we were trying to do the celebrate piece of it. I was trying to I was surprised how somber it became, but that was probably more my observation, just as as everybody else in the room was kind of processing it.
Yeah.
Not of course, but as the teacher, you've processed this and you have this, image in your mind of, what a reaction might be to what you say.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And it's like, it was more somber than I was anticipating, but
I'm sorry, Mark.
oh, it's okay.
I won't cry next time.
It was, it was still good.
No,
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I feel like when speaking, it's almost never quite like you anticipate.
I hear you.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. That's
Anyway.
fair too. Yeah. But yeah,
So
I'm thankful for grace. You're thankful for mercy.
that's right.
And your
I'm
family.
Thankful for Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Just the
Actually-
opportunity to reflect.
Yeah. I actually posted a picture of some spring dogwoods the other day. I said, I'm thankful for spring.
There you go.
Yeah. 'Cause how often do you say you're thankful for spring at Thanksgiving? I was like,
Yeah.
that's how I'm feeling. So get here quickly. No, it's all good. But I do miss spring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're waiting for your anticipation. You kind of dread the cold and the dark of the winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm trying to,
I know.
not use the word dread. So
Okay. Sorry.
don't drag me down. Come on, man.
I just triggered Justin.
That's right.
But yes, that's why he's in his pajama pants this
That's
morning.
right. That's right. That's what, you know what? That's what winter's about,
I guess so.
you know?
Yeah.
For me.
I understood.
It's about relaxing.
Make sure you get dressed and get a shower today so we're not falling.
Optionally. Anyway,
Yes.
we've talked about marriage counseling before, right?
We have.
We've done an episode on that.
We have.
But we thought it would be interesting, particularly because, you know, you do this somewhat regularly, and we were just
podcast or
asked,
marriage counseling?
Yes, both. Megan and I were asked recently to do it for a couple, which is kind of fun and
Do what?
this thing I'm going to say.
Oh.
that I haven't said yet. Premarital counseling.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So this idea of, you know, what is premarital counseling? Like
Sure.
preparing you for marriage, basically. I mean, it's as we enter this thing, it's like, what are we even supposed to be accomplishing? Because
such a simple word.
Yeah, exactly.
Pre-marriage.
Pre-marriage.
So complex.
Yes. Yeah, and it's supposed to be like, after you do this, you're going to have a great marriage. And
There
it's
you
like,
go.
No, Megan and I did premarital counseling before we married, and we learned, like the book we're reading with them and stuff, like all the stuff in there, we learned the hard way, even with premarital counseling. So it's like, what are we doing? Well, I think in some ways, maybe it's just setting up the beginnings of a foundation to build on. What do you think?
Sure.
What is premarital counseling to you, Mark?
Well,
You're the professional.
From my perspective, it's that it reminds me of open-mindedness. You know, in that context, you know, you take this, well, especially like say in your situation, you take this, you know, sweet young couple that, you know, hasn't been married before, you know, they've come out of their own individual family systems, you know, with their own unique family systems, you know, because each family system is unique. That's what makes every marriage unique from my perspective.
Yeah.
You know? So you take all of that, and I think you need to create that open-mindedness that says, okay, I've come from here and I'm joining in relationship with somebody who's come from all the way over there.
Yeah.
And I don't care if you grew up in the same church, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we just don't realize how different we are until we're married. And, you know, and you can do, I mean, prepare, enrich. There's all kinds of assessments you can do out there, you know, that kind of rank, you know, how you would view family dynamics, you know, parenting, you know, money, sex, all those topics, you know, and you can say, you're compatible in this area and this area. And it's like, no, sorry. You know, I mean, granted, don't get me wrong. The assessments have value.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're just beginning to create what I would call, you know, the beginnings of self and others awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially in this context of, you know, young people getting married. Who,
Sure.
You know, kind of maybe they've been on their own for a little bit or whatever. But yeah, I agree.
Well, and I think like the parrots, you know, they have the saving your marriage before it starts stuff, but they also have like saving your second marriage before it's, you know, it's a part of it, you know. So you think about that in that context. That's
an author in a book. Just
yes.
The parrot, he's not referring to birds.
Leslie Parrott.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the book that I'm referring to is called Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts.
That's correct.
Which may be referred to as what?
Symbis.
Symbis, yes. Yes. Sorry,
Before
the train left the station, I want to make sure we were all on it. So carry away.
No, but they also have another series that is, you know, geared towards remarriage.
Oh, cool.
You follow me?
Yeah.
So it's not always, when we're talking about pre-marriage, we're not always talking, in our day and age, we're not always talking about, you know, people who have just been married for the first time.
Yeah.
You know, so there's also those dynamics in place and I think, you know, there's no doubt that remarriage can be tougher than that first time around, you know?
Yeah. Because not only do you have failed expectations from the previous marriage.
Sure.
But now you have new expectations or like rules, maybe.
Sure.
Like I won't do that, or that's
no
not
one's
gonna
ever going to treat me like that again. Yeah.
And
It's kind of like that. I like Jimmy Evans talks about the woman. Have you've seen Dances with Wolves?
yeah,
But there's the lady that's named Stands with a Fist.
yeah.
And it's kind of that image. It's
Yeah.
like someone has hurt me before.
Yeah,
So now I'm just less vulnerable.
that's right. Yeah,
And so now, there's no longer innocent until proven guilty type thing.
right. Right. You're guilty till proven innocent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, those dynamics are what come into play.
I think in both cases, though, there are some similarities that I've been thinking about, which is that when you are in a pre-marriage relationship, typically, depending on how long you've been together and what kind of life you've done together, you're still in a certain state of being that desires to be your best self for that person.
Sure.
It's the wooing, right?
Sure. It's the mask.
Yeah, but I mean, wow. Went right to mask. No, I mean, it's like this
our dating
desire
culture
to be,
creates this.
Well, hang on.
I'm sorry. Go ahead,
I want to
Justin.
hear your mask theory, but no, I'm talking about like, I just remember with Megan dating, when there was a schism or disagreement, or whatever, like I would try and rise above because I loved her, right? And like it's that wooing state that we are in pre-marriage that says, I'm gonna be the best version of myself for you because I love you and I want to be with you forever. And it's like kind of this thing that we don't realize at some point after getting married. Some people it's the minute you say I do. For some people it's a year. Some people, they mention a 3 years average honeymoon period kind of thing. But there's a switch that turns off and says, okay, now I should be able to be the worst version of me to you because you accept me for who I am. Like there's almost a switch and a reversal that goes the other direction to where...
You know what that's called?
No, I bet you do.
Human nature.
Yeah. But I think, pre-marriage, whether it's a second marriage, third marriage, whatever, or even there is that state we're in while dating.
Sure.
That I think is... I guess I've never seen it not be there. So I think it's important to call that out.
That's why I call it a mask. But it is that aspect of putting your best foot forward.
Right. But a mask I think of as obligatory, right? Like I need to hide myself. It's almost like a shame-based thing where this feels different to me. It feels more like a mask you really want to wear. It's like a mask that you're hoping to become. It's almost like aspirational, and this woman brings out the best in me, and you might believe that mask really is you because this woman brings out the best in me, and look who I can be because I'm with her, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a little bit different, and not that it's not a mask, just that it feels different than when
it's a pretense.
Yeah. So anyway, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Lots of thoughts, but at the same time...
Does that feel true? I mean, does that make sense to you, though? Like, is that a thing?
Well, that is a thing.
Okay.
That is a thing that we put our best foot forward. And granted, I think our dating culture promotes that.
Yeah.
Which, it's like, I'm going to do these things. I'm going to, I know for Chris and I can remember how big of an adjustment it was when we actually got married and started living together. She just saw a different context of me and didn't realize what my job entailed.
Yeah.
Sawdust and sweat kind of, surmise my work life. And so, I like the smell of sawdust. I personally do, that kind of thing. But she had always, we had in the process of us being together, sorry about the beeps. That's okay. The dating process, I smelled a lot better. Yeah. Because it was, it was weekends and stuff. And so.
No, would you say that was a mask? just the fact that you were clean when you would go out with her.
No,
I guess that's kind of my point.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call that a mask. I would say that's just the nature of.
That was the nature
wooing.
of the circumstance,
Yeah.
but yet it was a facet.
Yeah.
To where, and maybe that's kind of, not a deliberate mask, but it's like I could still say it was because I wouldn't go on a date with Chris.
Smelling like sawdust.
I'd just come home from work and say, okay, I'm heading out for a date, and show up smelling like sawdust and sweat, that kind of thing. Yeah. But so, I mean, I hear where you're coming from in that process, but I think it was more or less, what was acceptable, what was unacceptable in dating.
Yeah.
But so, that was a, those snacks catching up with me, but that was a pretense, of us, just in that dating dynamic versus, living together on a full-time basis to experience that broadness that we do. And I think, there's nothing wrong with maintaining that dating part of a relationship.
Right.
When I say mask, is there's nothing wrong with, but yet I'm also recognizing this isn't who I am on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Putting that best foot forward.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, we all have ugly parts, whether it's smells or attitudes or, you know what I mean? Toenails that are too long, whatever it is, right? Like, we all socks on the floor, whatever.
Sure.
There is no person who doesn't have those flaws.
Yes.
But during dating, we're doing our best to hide those or minimize those, or like I said earlier, like even we get better at some of those things, thinking this woman has changed me. Mm-hmm. But I honestly believe it's the process that's changed you, and once that it's the state, the nature, the
wooing,
the chemical things that are happening in your body, the euphoria. Yeah, exactly. That's what's changing you. Mm-hmm. And I also think, you could potentially rewire some of those synapses, right? Like through that process, but it's more likely that you attribute it to this woman, which is dangerous. Mm-hmm. Like, because once you get married, you start seeing each other's ugly sides, and the switch flips. It's like, this woman no longer does it for me,
Yeah. And I think, I think it's a healthy thing, even in marital relationship, we date, I'll say, based on the 80% that is a person. You follow me? We see the good, we see and from my perspective, even in marriage, I believe all those characteristics remain.
Yeah, the good.
The good.
Yeah.
But our tendency is when we experience a certain dynamic, and like you're saying, more of a negative dynamic, we're almost identifying the other 20%.
Yeah.
And we can focus on one or the other.
Yeah.
And it makes a tremendous difference in the relationship.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think for me, some of the saddest, when it comes to pre-marriage stuff, some of the sadder comments I hear are, I wish my parents had gotten divorced versus staying together. Because I think when I grew up in such fighting, such chaotic, turmoil, I think that was harder for me than if my parents would have just gotten divorced.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a sad thing.
Yeah.
Because here you have this couple who, really gutted it out, for the sake of, family and kids and so forth. And I think about that and it's like, man, if they just had someone to talk to, if we could have just dealt with a couple of those things, it would have made such a difference. And that's the sad part to me. And I think
that's why you're a marriage and family therapist. It makes sense.
But, it's just to that point of, recognizing, it's going to be difficult and there's going to be there's conflict. And, you know, I think that's another part of the pre-marriage counseling is to be able to recognize that conflict is okay.
Yeah.
And it's normal.
Yeah.
Because we have this tendency to think about things, well, you know, we hear from couples who say, well, we've never had an argument in 20 years. It's like, well, I'm sorry, you know, I really am sorry because you
very
don't,
backed up.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of intimacy in that if it is, because it's just one of you isn't known, in my opinion, at that point. And I think, you know, that's where that process, and granted, it's not to say there aren't, you know, godly couples who, you know, resolve conflict better,
right?
But to say that we've had none, you know, that concerns me more than the couple who's saying, yeah, we, you know, have some disagreements, and, you know, routinely it's about this subject or this area. And it's like, okay, that's good, you know, because we can start with that and start working through it. And I think that's part of what pre-marriage is, you know, in that aspect of, okay, there's going to be this 20%, you know, that you're going to be faced with. And what do you do with that?
Yeah.
And I think that's where, like you're saying, I think we do change, you know, and we, you know, early on, but I think it's, from my perspective, you know, it's the 10 years and beyond, 10-year marriages and beyond that really define where change starts to happen.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's like almost at, you know, there's always the 7-year itch type dynamics, you know, those difficult years.
Because humans are pretty resilient, right? So you can put up with 7 to 10 years of stuff.
Yeah.
But after, there's something in there, right?
Yep.
I guess what you're saying where the resilience starts to wear off. And
well, and I think at those times stressors, you know, it's most
it's something to do with timing too.
It has a lot to do with life cycle stages.
And kids.
You know, where your kids are at, you know, because, you know, you've been married 7 years. Typically, you know, your kids are starting to enter into preschool, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, the roles are changing, and, you know, my identity is changing because now I, you know, have these kids that are going away from the home, and, you know, that kind of thing. And, you know, after that, you're kind of into adolescence, which has its whole other dynamic, early adolescence, teenagers, you know, as they're crossing over. So you can see these different dynamics that come into play with each stage and what goes along with it. So I mean, it connects together, but being able to recognize, there's gonna be some conflicts that come, just based on the fact. And I think that's the pre-marriage piece, you know, especially with these younger couples. It's like
preparation.
It's like, I had no idea. You know, I mean, it was really that way to the point of I just never imagined that you could do that, or that you'd see the, you know, parenting that way. Right. Now, granted, it makes perfect sense. Right. But from my perspective, your perspective seems way wrong.
It seems foreign. Wrong. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's part of that pre-marriage dynamic.
Yeah.
Is to be able to recognize, we are far different than we're able to recognize at this point. Right. But that difference isn't wrong.
And the thing is,
and to be able to communicate that or create that understanding now, it's like, oh, that's what Justin and Megan were telling us about. And now we're seeing it, and suddenly it's normalized it. Yeah. Whereas in other cases, without that conversation, that pre-marriage counseling,
all kinds of
it's
wrong.
Like something's wrong.
Yeah.
And it's either you or it's me. Yeah. And I've got an idea it's you at this point.
Yeah. It's good. Yeah. So premarital counseling, pre-marriage is kind of hopefully about setting up some proper expectations for what to expect. And
sure.
Because, you know, I was just thinking about like the scenario, the 10-year, 7-year itch, and the stressors that are around those times. There's just no way to cover that ground in pre-marriage.
No, I hear you.
You know what I mean? So it's more about setting up proper expectations for how to do life together in the long haul.
Sure.
And learning to put on your your boxing gloves properly and
fighting rules.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. And where it's the boundaries. What are the boundaries of our fights, and how many rounds do we get to go, and
what can we spend individually without talking about it as a couple, around finances, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because we look at finances so completely different based on how we grew up. Chris and I definitely, that was one of our bigger issues, was the financial differences between us.
Yeah, the other thing too, obviously sex, especially in, younger couples who maybe who haven't had sex yet, as it was with Megan and I, we had no idea what expectations there were. Well, I can't say that. I mean, I had, viewed my overly fair share of porn. So I had those expectations, you know what I mean? And man, that's one that's like, not only is it super hard expectations wise, but it's also hard to talk about in pre-marriage or any time, even in marriage, like with others, counseling, whatever. I mean, it's just, and that's one of those subjects.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the, areas, especially, around sex and pre-marriage counseling, regardless of whether someone has been together previously or, saying it's like
every partner's different.
But being able to recognize our families don't always teach us how to talk about that subject, and so often in our family systems, it will tend to be a perspective that, sex is bad.
Yeah.
Don't do this. Sex is bad.
Right.
But then suddenly we're married.
And it's supposed to be good
and
all of a sudden.
And it's all of a sudden, flip the switch.
Yeah.
And it's like, really?
Yeah.
How do we, so being able to recognize that purpose for sex, talk about that, and the ability to be able to recognize, okay, learning how to talk about, okay, what's good for you, what works for you, what, what's uncomfortable, what doesn't work, in such a way that's, like any other topic, we're able to talk about it in a way that helps us meet each other's needs in ways that are beneficial.
Yeah.
And I think, regular married couples have to learn how to do that,
Yeah.
But I think that pre-marriage piece, and I'll be honest, I'll do the pre-marriage counseling in a lot of cases. I mean, every time I, marry a couple or whatever, but it's interesting in that context, I'll always follow up. It's like, okay, and let's get back together in a year.
Yeah.
Because I think it adds, so now, once that first year is up, then we're starting to recognize, that's what that was about. And that was that. And then we're able to kind of get those, what could be a ditch, or a trench, we're able to kind of, fill that in such a way that says, okay, maybe, we can change some of these habits early on before we just get entrenched in them, that kind of thing. Yeah. That's why I like to follow up, afterwards. And,
that's good. And it sets the expectation too, that it's not a like pat on your butt, you're on your way. Yeah. Good luck. Yeah. It's like, no, this is
an ongoing.
Yeah. This is just setting up some expectations, but the real work is after this premarital counseling is done. That's when the rubber hits the road. So
no doubt.
Ideally, right, like counseling happens hand in hand with practicing what you're, you know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
Where premarital counseling is a little bit harder to practice some of that. I mean, obviously you can, and I think that's also the intention, right, is to make sure they start working on some of those things.
Sure.
In the pre-marriage state, as they're planning weddings, as they're finding a house, all that stuff. Like,
sure.
There's opportunities there, but but that is the unique nature of pre-marriage counseling. It's like you're talking about a thing that's not a thing yet, so it's not as easy to practice those principles.
No doubt. And there's a part of me that I would, in what I do, the passion that I have, that kind of thing, I think, not that it's full on pre-marriage counseling, but I think, relationship classes our school systems could benefit from relationship classes, early on, that kind of have a healthy, understanding of what healthy relationship looks like. that kind of thing. Because, well, so often, even when we do the Marriage on the Rock classes, which are open to, pre-marriage and, that kind of thing, so often we'll hear, man, I wish we could have gotten this information, from the older couples. They'll say, I wish we could have had this 20 years ago, that kind of thing. And being able to recognize that, doing, meeting with a couple like you guys are doing, or reading a book, or going through a video series actually does increase our success in marriage.
Yay.
To where, yeah, really.
It's not useless.
Exactly. Just wanted to affirm that process. Yeah. To where,
cool.
There is, basically creating that understanding. And I think it is part of that normalization process, that says, oh, other people have ran into this issue before. It's not just you and me, and it's you and me against the world, and we're the only ones messed up.
Yeah.
In that process, it's like, no, everybody has their issues, and some people are able to talk about it with other people, and maybe find some tools.
Yeah, it's hard to talk about that without overemphasizing, because I can't. Like, we probably said many times marriage is hard in our first. It's like, we also want to be careful about overemphasizing that, but it is true, and it is that's a good expectation, but also it's great, so.
I like the garden analogy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because, it's going to take effort. It's going to take work, and you have to maintain a garden.
Yeah.
But yet there are a lot of blessings that come with it if we just choose to put the effort in. And the best way to put the effort in is on a consistent and routine basis. We can't wait till the weeds have overgrown everything. Yeah. Because then it's more work.
Yeah.
And it's good. And it's easier to, kind of
more work. There's less harvest. I don't know.
Bounty.
Yeah, less bounty due to the neglect. Yeah, so it's like doubly hard because you have to make up lost ground, and you're not going to get the same benefits yet.
Sure.
Right? For a while till you can kind of.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. I like that analogy.
And I think so.
Secretly, I wanted us to do this episode so I could just share it with them and be like, this way you get Mark too.
Hey, Mark, I got this couple. What do you think about doing pre-marriage counseling as a topic? It's like, sure.
I got my fishing rod, reeled them right in.
Good deal. I'm all for it. I'm all for helping any young couple to, Yeah. And I think, from as I'm thinking about you guys doing this, being able to share, that, it was tough, at eras. And yet I still think, marriage is the greatest growth producing opportunity that we have, short of just one-on-one relationship with Christ, and and that's typically what I get most sad about. Is when I think about how many divorces are occurring, and the growth opportunities that were missed out on.
Yeah, it's stunting growth.
Yes,
almost embedding a lack of growth.
Right. Yeah, and I'm going to pull back because I'm not saying that in the aspect of someone who's had a divorce. And, I recognize there's a lot of factors that come into play, substance and, abuse. And I'm not minimizing any of that. I'm just saying it's sad when I recognize that, and this is the other part of the story that I'll routinely hear. And it kind of reaffirms my 80-20 type principle. It's like how often I've heard, well, my parents couldn't get along. They never got along. Sometimes they even divorced, and now they're good friends. They both remarried, but suddenly they're good friends again. Yeah. And I think it's sad, when couples aren't able to find that, because there again, all the things that attracted you to somebody from my perspective have been there all along. So, it's like...
Do you think that's true, though? I mean, you already said that.
I mean, short of substance and abuse, and where a person changes or, an addiction type thing. Yes.
I guess what I'm saying is like... just going back to the previous theory I was talking about, like, for the most part... Okay, I'm trying to think it through.
Go ahead.
I think it's the easiest to present the best version of yourself in that dating relationship, so in a fresh relationship with a girl and with an intention towards marriage. And so I'm trying to decide if I think that stuff goes away or not. But I feel like the ability to reach that peak of who you are doesn't go away. I don't know.
I would hear me out. Okay. In the dynamic you were thinking about, from my perspective, I would say that change is an aspect of priority.
Yes. Agreed.
You follow me?
Oh, yeah.
So when
Totally.
I am dating, you are my priority.
Yep.
When, not you personally, of course, but
That's good.
in that process,
It should be the one you're dating, Mark.
Exactly. Thank
This
you for the
podcast
clarification.
is important. But
Exactly. The words we use matter. Yes. But being able to recognize, okay, I did what I did at the beginning of our relationship because you were a priority to me. Human nature kicks in, and suddenly that priority changes.
Yep.
So now sometimes work is the priority. My friends, my family can be reprioritized to where now my marital relationship comes in at 2, 3, 4, really starting to get into trouble if we're at 5, Yeah. So the reality of it is, if we want to go back, it's not a simple process, but at the same time, it's plausible. But either way, in order,
that was plausible.
But
all those P's.
The process becomes, I have to go back and start doing the things that I once did to bring back that level of relationship. And so, I think, running into this all the time, where touch tends to go away. Physical touch tends to go away. Because we've replaced it with just sex. So now, I have this, typically it's
outlet,
typically I have this female that's basically saying he doesn't touch me anymore short of the bedroom.
Yeah.
Or I know if he's touching me, he's desiring to have sex type thing, and that just basically is a reprioritizing. So if we want to bring that wholeness back, and then he'll complain, well, we don't have sex, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But if we want to bring that wholeness back, we got to recognize, no, we need non-sexual touch, in the process of relationship. So then that couple's able to recognize, well, my body isn't just a sex object. I'm someone you care about, you cherish, that kind of thing. So that's just another.
No, I love all that. Now hear me out.
Yes, go right ahead. Let her rip. I love all that, but let me speak.
Everyone knows that's how I am. No. I do appreciate that, and I think that's a good way to reframe the conversation about priorities. I guess the perspective that I'm coming from is in the pre-marriage relationship where it's an unhealthy level of priority. So, because that I'm kind of coming even from my own perspective, and how I kind of remember being. It was Megan was everything, and to the degree where I would argue was unhealthy. I would say it didn't negatively impact my life in a ton of ways, but it probably did in ways I didn't realize it. But definitely
if Megan hadn't been more healthy, it could have definitely had a profound impact on you based on the fact that you saw her as number one versus
she could have embraced that as being that's right, and then so I guess that's kind of where I was coming from, in the sense of there's a level of priority that's unhealthy, and therefore I did things that I will not ever do again and or should not do. Just in terms of priority, right? Like one example I can think of is leaving work to go visit her. Like, no, you should do work. That's what a man does. That's what you're supposed to do. Now, I see your look, and I think it's okay to go get lunch. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like when I abandon the responsibilities that I'm responsible for, those in.
So where's that line?
Well, I think you have to figure that out. But,
sure. Because there might be.
I think you know what I'm saying, though, right?
I do. I do know what you're saying.
Unhealthy level of.
And I would
priority.
say here again, I'm clarifying. When I say number one, that's second to God.
Yeah.
God, my relationship with Jesus Christ always has to be foundational to do healthy relationship.
Yeah.
Because then I'm actually able to recognize better prioritization.
Yeah, that's good.
Because it's easy to make work, because that's tied into my identity.
Yeah.
It's easy to make work my priority. And then I tell my wife, yes, I love you. That's why I'm working 70 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, no, that really has little to do with that desire to provide, which I'm understanding part of the difference between the male-female dynamic, but at the same time, when you're talking about Megan being too high or, that the healthy number one, I think there's also something to be said for we can make that person Jesus to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is unhealthy because ultimately we're, she's a great Megan, she's a lousy Jesus.
Right.
So when I am, or when in relationship, I have too high priority, on that person, and I would kind of put it in the terms of that person becomes my reason for living.
Right.
Right. Then that is an unhealthy relationship. It's I would say codependent.
Yeah.
Because all my happiness depends on your happiness.
Yeah.
And so, that's unhealthy relationship. And that would be an area where, we'd have to say, okay, we need to start working on some of these other priorities. Not that they would necessarily listen to you at that point, or me for that matter. But I'm saying, sometimes it would be a matter of saying, you guys aren't ready yet.
Yeah.
But a lot of people won't necessarily listen at that point either.
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead. Tell me you like what I'm saying, but it's your turn to speak.
I like what you're saying. No. I do. I think that's great. I think often too, like we'll hold up the old dating version of ourselves as like our spouse will hold that as the ideal, or I might about myself.
Sure.
But I think it's probably fair to say that a majority of dating relationships aren't perfect relationships. Sure. I would argue that there's probably a lot of that replacing number one, and putting them there, and therefore again, the way we operate.
Help me understand that. What replacing number one?
Kind of like rising to the top of priority list over God, over everything, right? I think that seems not uncommon, especially in the environment I grew up in, where it was a church environment, and it was like when couples started dating. Yeah, it was just reached it again. More often than not, I saw priorities shift to the degree where it seemed unhealthy to me, even in my young state. And looking back to, like, I say all that to say that if we hold that as the ideal, the unhealthy version of ourselves that put you at a priority above God, then that we're always going to have a bad set of expectations too.
Agreed.
So like saying you need to be like you were when you're dating may not be the correct statement. And I would argue maybe rarely is the right statement. It's more about, I think learning from some of the things we did in dating and how the priority was higher, and that still needs to be the case. Like they still need to be, number one priority besides God or whatever, and shifting some of those things to look more like dating, but in a healthier context. I don't know yeah. It's your turn.
Oh, okay. My turn to speak. But I think, in that wooing that you describe.
Yeah.
Okay. It's easy to recognize that we lose the desire to pursue our spouse.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Yeah.
It can tend to minimize, because there are other things.
Because we won, right? Like
There's something to be said for that.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the human nature component.
Yeah.
It's like especially as males, we've achieved, our desire. So now we're on to pursuing other things. And so therefore work does become more important because now I want the boat, I want the car, I want all the other things that go along with having my wife. And yet from her perspective, all of these other things become more important than she is. Mm-hmm. And my tendency is to say, oh, you're the most important person to me, but that's not reflected in my actions. What my actions say is all these other things are more important to me. So I just, bless you, sir. My words don't replace my actions.
Yeah.
And so often that's the difficult process is it's like, I love you.
Yeah.
That's why I do all that I do.
Yeah.
And no, that's not always the case. And that's, coming from a reformed workaholic, in that process. But it is to the point of being able to say, okay, what does it look like? And how do we redefine this? Mm-hmm. Because I think that is a part of it is I have to in a lot of cases redefine my identity.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, in that relationship you were talking about, it's like that person may not have even liked their identity. So now I have this other person that's adding value to my identity.
Yeah.
Now, this is going to be wonderful. This is going to be great. Somebody who loves me unconditionally, who accepts me all the time. Okay. Unhealthy expectation.
Right.
But yet it's understandable, based on that identity that I have, so being able to, walk with couples in such a way that says, okay, your identity will shift. You will become Mr. and Mrs., and, this is just a first step in a number of identity changes. Because your jobs are going to change, you're going to have kids, you're going to be Susie or Johnny's mom, someday, and that identity, or dad, there's going to be these series of identity changes that come in this process. Yep. And each identity change is going to have some conflict or some, rupture and repair that goes along with that. Hopefully the repair, but it's going to be an adjustment. There's going to be certain aspects of conflict. And that when, as we're talking with young couples, being able to recognize, there's absolutely nothing wrong when that conflict comes. It just means that something has changed. Yeah. And I may not even necessarily be sure of what it is, but that's where self and others awareness kind of comes into that dynamic.
It's also where iron sharpens iron comes in, right?
Can be.
Can be. Yeah. Because a marriage that your rough edges are going to rub against your partner and vice versa.
Yep.
And so that's an opportunity.
Yeah. Nice job. Yes. That's an opportunity.
That's a markism.
Opportunity for conflict.
Yeah. And so to slowly sharpen each other.
Yeah.
Although that metaphor conflicts because sharp edges, sharpening. Yeah. But you get the point.
Yeah. But, sharp isn't bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You take a scalpel, for instance, that kind of thing. Yeah, the cut seems to be, but ultimately it's about healing eventually. Yeah.
And learning to, smooth down some rough edges and sharpen other ones that should be sharpened. But that's an opportunity you have together to grow together and to hear what they're saying when your flaws are hurting them or, rubbing them the wrong way. And that's an opportunity, like you said, growth. There's a lot of growth.
Yep.
So many growth opportunities in marriage, right?
And I think that's where, God's word comes to play. It's a double-edged sword. It has that ability to cut yet heal in that process, and as we both spend time in God's word, God's able to use his word to heal me, apart from Chris. And yet she's also a part of that healing process because it's like she's bringing it into my awareness. Revealing, that's the word I was looking for. She's revealing my weaknesses, and she does a good job of lovingly calling that out in most cases, to the point of saying, hey, do you see how much time you're spending doing this or doing that? And, in comparison to how much, it's like, good point, valid point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
So, she helps me create those boundaries that, are saying, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that we do is in pre-marriage is we look at these things that are really good about the person. Mm-hmm. And often, I mean, this is something actually the couple brought up, but like often in marriage, it flips to where that's the thing you resent. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so that's a common thing you've talked with me about too, is like how trying to get them to remember what they appreciate about that person. It's that same thing. And I don't know, for me, as always, the stick comes to mind, right?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This thing, like, for instance, you mentioned work, but he's a hard worker, and that's what drew me to him. That's what, made me really love him. And I could just see that he had that integrity to get up and go to work and really just, man up. Right.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, in marriage, it all kind of shifts. And that same characteristic is now bothersome because I want him home with me, and and being able to understand both as him and as her, the stick nature, where, you like this end of the stick, but it comes with this other end, which is maybe doesn't come home as early as you'd like. And that's not good. Like, I'm not saying that it's good. Like, he needs to learn how to keep that stick balance, right? And that's my whole theory, right? Is like, he needs to understand that while you're a hard worker, it cannot, come at this price of, betraying your wife by not, and vice versa. She has to have that same balance in her mind of, that really bothers me, but it's also what wooed me to him. And it's still what I value and love about him, is that he'll get up, get to work. He's making it happen for our family. And like being able to keep that in balance is a challenge, but I think important. What do you think?
Well, I was thinking about the idea of balance. I would propose in some ways the differences between men and women. Men will not, in my opinion, have the same level of balance where relationship is concerned. I think women were designed differently, and I think relationship is a higher priority for them. Yeah. And they have a greater concern about maintaining relationship than guys do. So, the stick analogy, while good, I don't think we can always say, well, you just need to balance like I balance. Yeah. I think sometimes I have to recognize that, part of who Chris is designed to be as that easer, if you will, that helpmate, is that understanding of being able to help me recognize when my relationship priorities are out of line. Yeah. And I think, women are, let's be honest. The majority of couples that come into my office are typically not led by the men. Yeah. You follow me? Right. Yep. I'm not trying to speak out of just my experience, but yes, that is to where women have that dynamic. And I think so often in our maleness, we can see that as crazy jealousy. You follow me? When the priorities are, as men, when our wives say, hey, our relationship is, suffering, we see that, you're doing this, you're doing that. Yeah. We see it as crazy jealousy. As in they're wrong for yes, they're just too sensitive. They have, that. But in the reality, I believe that's healthy jealousy. Right. Just like God has, his name is jealous. One of his names is jealous, to the point of he doesn't want anything else to, not that it's, minimizes who he is, but he just cares about us that much to where he doesn't want other things coming between us and him. Mm-hmm. And I think, he's given that design, if you will, more so towards women. And I think as men, it's helpful for us to reflect on that, to be able to say, because I think so often, and this is part of that pre-marriage counseling piece, if you will, write this one down. No, I'm just kidding. Avoiding the defensiveness.
Yeah.
You know, because so often our tendency is to react out of defensiveness in that process. You don't know. Well, now just listen for a second and try to just accept influence because this is something you probably need to hear. And if you're just becoming defensive, then you're likely not hearing. And
I mean, I can write that down and I could say that, but how do you tell someone, remember, don't be defensive? Like how?
That's a good job. Nice job. You just told me not to be defensive. Now,
right.
What I need you to do is tell me what it looks like in me.
Okay. To not be defensive.
To not be defensive.
Yeah, I like that. Okay.
You follow me? It's
I'll
not
write that.
when I start, you know.
I'm going to write down.
I was joking, but that's okay.
I have a list. So I'm adding it.
What does defensiveness look like in me?
Right.
And then, you know, that process of it's likely going to involve the word you versus I.
Yeah.
You know, if you didn't, you know, I wouldn't. That's the beginning of defensiveness.
I got it written down.
You know, avoiding defensiveness is a phrase that helps us avoid defensiveness, is the ability to say, okay, I hear where you're coming from. Help me understand that better.
Yeah, help me understand. I'm going to write that down. Help me understand.
This is free to you, Justin, I promise.
The bill's in the mail. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. You say that a lot, you know, outside this context. Help me understand. Like you say that yourself personally, but you also say it in context of these type of things. And I think that's just a really good, practice if you're feeling defensive to go try and embrace that terminology. Not just the terminology, though, the philosophy, right?
Yeah. The desire to understand.
Yeah.
Because so often in the midst of a conflict, and that's kind of what began, you know, this, you know, how I see it.
I don't mean like, help me understand why you're a jerk.
Exactly. Yeah. Really, help me understand where that feeling's come from.
Yeah.
Help me understand what you saw in me. Help me understand, you know, and how did that impact you?
Yeah.
You know, this ability to, there again, others' awareness. You know, because if a person's having a conflict with me, you know, likely there's an issue and I need to know more about that to be able to come to a resolution. Not that we always have to have agreement,
Right.
but there's the ability to create resolution.
Right. Yeah. And thinking again about common, you know, roles between men and women, I think it's very common for a man to not, to not think about other, right? And to process everything through his own skull, you know, and like, what does this mean for me? What is she saying? What does it mean for me? Versus how does this impact her and how am I impacting her? It's more like, what is she saying and how's it impacting me? And what am I going to have to do now to placate her? And it's more about...
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
And I think women are better about that, but almost can become a flaw in the other direction. The codependence of like, oh, is he upset? What do I need to do to make sure he's not upset? And that's the other end of the continuum. That's also unhealthy, and there needs to be both directions move towards the middle, right? Where a man needs to be thinking, did I upset her?
Sure.
What did I do? That needs to happen more often. And a woman probably needs to think that less. Maybe. I don't know.
And part of what you're describing there, and we can talk about this too, is the love styles.
Yeah.
That's a you know, becoming great, creating an awareness about love styles and what my tendencies are. Help me understand, you know, my family systems and where I've come from.
User friendly. That was the episode on love style.
Yes.
I was like, I know we didn't name it love styles.
No, user friendly.
Sorry.
Yeah. And yet I think, you know, so often part of the communication dynamic we're running into is like you described, guys as a rule will tend to they'll tend to think about things in their own mind, so much so to the point of, I know we've talked about this. When in reality, the female, the wife is just hearing that information the first time, maybe after the fact or even right before the fact. So it seems as a big surprise to her. And, he's looking at his wife saying, what do you mean? We've talked about this before. When in reality, that thought has never been verbalized.
Right, because he thinks it's a hive mind situation.
Sure.
She'll just intuit all my thoughts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She knows,
Which,
and it
to
can
be
go
fair,
both directions.
I think women do have a supernatural ability sometimes to intuit things. I think maybe sometimes a guy gets confused because she didn't intuit this thing where she has in the past.
She has other things.
Of course you would know that because you knew that and you knew that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so often that
Use your words, guy.
Yeah. And so often that can also be a detrimental conversation or communication. I know what you're thinking.
That's right. Yeah.
I know why you did that.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we got to pull that back.
Yeah.
So that ability to read minds and think we know what someone is thinking based on the action we saw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many opportunities for growth in marriage.
Yes, there are.
And I think that's what pre-marriage is about, is embracing that concept.
Yes.
Of this is an ongoing opportunity the rest of your life to grow and learn.
This is a sanctifying process. I can become more Christ-like through this process.
But also what you get back is an amazing relationship that's unlike any other relationship in your life.
Sure.
The level of intimacy, physically, mentally, emotionally, all those things you can't have in any other type of relationship.
Sure.
So that's what you get in return. You get this amazing relationship that, because I was challenged about how many times I say marriage is difficult. It's like, no, but also this is the benefit of it, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk with anybody who's been married over 20 years and, you'll hear about, the difficult times, but you'll also at the same time, if they have their stick in order, you'll hear about the blessings that come through those difficult times. And when we've,
Thank you for using the stick. It's about time, Mark.
I try, Justin. I try.
I don't know all your clients, but I know some of them. And I want to hear them come out of the meeting and say, did you know, Mark, you used your stick? That's my dastardly plan.
Yeah, I was talking with Mark and he mentioned your stick the other day. Justin would be very proud of that moment. Yeah. Yes. But here again, we can think about it in terms of the continuum.
Yeah.
The continuum's kind of like your stick anyway.
It is,
so, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Finding that shared likeness, if you will.
Yep.
So, yeah. Well, by all means, Justin, blessings to you in that process and to that couple. Like you say, I know of them and I wish them all the blessings of a happy marriage. And yeah.
Any advice you have for them since you know who it is? This is your last opportunity to fix it before we mess it up.
Just make your relationship, Christ-centered and, be like Justin and Megan. They're good folk. Yeah.
All right. Well.
Yeah.
It was all good up until.
Keep Christ the center. But that's what you guys do.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys do that. And so, it's okay to say be like Justin and Megan. Keeping Christ in the center.
Also be like Mark and Kristen.
Yeah.
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 You're like,
exactly.
You're like, I can't argue because
it's like that. It's like that scripture. I think there's, I think I can always wrestle with that.
Where Paul says.
Yeah. Be like me.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm okay with that. If that means modeling Christ-centered relationship to the best of your ability, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
Yep.
That's a good way to say how we see it.
That's right. That's how we see it.
Hey, thank you for listening to our podcast. If you like how I see it, please do all the things that podcasts tell you to do. Subscribe, rate, review, follow us, and or talk nicely about us on social media. If you want to reach out, the email is us@howiseeit.click. Yep, I said .click, as in .click. Please tell your friends about this show, and we'll see you on the next one.